All right. Well, welcome everyone back to the Wilkes-Barre Connect podcast. I'm your host, Dan Kimbrough, and joining me yet again this year is Mayor Lombardo from Pittston. How you doing, Mayor?
Good. Dan, it's great to be back with you. I always have fun, so thank you.
That's you. So the theme of this discussion is supposed to be the power of partnership, but we're going to check in a little bit on what's going on in Pittston first, and then we'll talk about some of the partners that you're working with. And so can you tell us what's new in Pittston? What's coming down the pike?
Sure. So to tee up the specifics of our conversation, for me, one of the constructs of progress and moving forward is partnership. So it's really easy to go into that. But right now we're working on a bunch of development projects. We're obviously working on a landscape that has changed a little bit in terms of available funding, but we're moving forward. And part of the way we move forward is by understanding what it is we're supposed to do, and then looking at, do we have present partners, or are there partners that are out there that we can sort of bring into the fold and participate with?
Gotcha. And so, so if we were walking down the street, what would we see that's changed? I know you talked about there was something going on with the new sewer system with PA American Water. You've also grown the city as well. Talk about some of those things.
Sure. So, we about a decade ago, we really started to look at how the city operates, and really we did a standard threat weakness analysis, or SWOT analysis. And one of the things that we saw was that, our infrastructure is old and it's challenging. And in the previous section, you heard my colleague, Wilkes-Barre Mayor George Brown, talk about challenges that he's just encountered by a sinkhole and collapses in two major sewer trunks. The sewer situation, it's not very interesting, and it might be considered to be boring, but it's critical. I mean, it's public safety. It's health. You need it. Yeah. So, but it's challenging, particularly in our cities. Most cities in the Northeast have sewer systems that are 100 plus years old. Yeah. And the technology is different now. And not only are they 100 plus years old, that we have these challenges of, people want to say, well, the city's not really as big as it was in terms of people 30, 40, 50 years ago. That is true, but because of the cities and their proximity in terms of transmission lines, we sort of are the end of the line. So some of the growth on the surrounding municipalities challenges and what I would call supercharges our system, and the systems aren't built to handle that. So as we looked at that, we saw infrastructure as really an extreme threat that bleeds over into financial, because if you don't have the funds to deal with $100,000 or a $200,000 or a $1.8 million challenge like the mayor's got in Wilkes-Barre, it punches a huge hole in your budget. So we went out and looked at partners. We hired some experts to come in, because I think one of the things we need to do well is understand our limitations. We are not experts in everything. Sometimes we think we are, and we misthink that. But so we went out and we hired some experts to really look, and specifically in the sewer situation, how do we manage this? What are our best options? And we spent about a year doing that. And at the end of the line, it came down to really three entities that we looked at, that we vetted, and in the end, I thought the best deal for the city, and when I say that, I speak on behalf of the taxpayers, because obviously when you're dealing with a public utility, one of the things that becomes question is where are the rates going to go? Yeah. So we spent a long time going back and forth, and I think that we struck a great deal with the American Water Company that affords us a couple things. It affords us fiscal opportunities in terms of funding that we're going to receive to purchase our system. It creates some efficiencies. The water company is already in our streets doing water, so you could have, instead of having competing work done, now you could have a company that now has our sewer and our water, and that's usually me that does it.
Of all people.
and really understands on a long range process. So if you're going to open Broad Street, let's open it once, right?
Gotcha.
You know what the water lines are, you know what the sewer lines are. And in doing that, then we as a city can partner with them. And Broad Street's an interesting example, because there's another layer of government there. That's a PennDOT street. Okay. So we could talk about waiving permit fees and paving curb to curb streets. So we see it as a way to upgrade infrastructure. We see it as a way to get great synergies between an organization and us, and then we see it as a way for other residual progress, getting streets paved. So, and the final thing on that discussion is that because the deal is such a good deal, it allows us to sort of bake into the deal some protections in rates. And I am not afraid to make this commitment publicly. I would do it on this podcast or any other source of public expression that's out there in front of me, is that I am confident and I guarantee that, look, we know that utility companies have costs.
Right.
And the 1.8 million problem that Mayor Brown has, if he handed it off to the water, it doesn't go away. They just need to deal with it. And there are costs associated with that. And as a result of that, they have a financial model they have to work on too. So we know that. So we've baked in, I think, some protections that will allow us to offset rate costs. And we would do that through things like rebates. So we are setting a portion of the money that we get aside to put some protections in place. So I think it's a really good deal. I stand behind the deal, and I take responsibility for the deal. And I think as an elected official, that's an obligation we have. So you have that, and then you had mentioned about growth. The city is 1.7 square miles. It has been for probably the last 180 years. And what's going to happen in January, though, is we're going to become 1.72 square miles. Right. And if you'd ask how we're doing that, we are utilizing a new annexation law that was passed about 2 years ago through Harrisburg. And it was passed for situations just like this. It wasn't passed to forcibly go and take over properties so that you burden taxpayers, because the residents in Jenkins, to lay our cards on the table, they pay a lower tax rate than we have in the city. And I'm not going to get into explaining that away. That's for another discussion. But what they do, that's a fact. So what this annexation law was really meant to do was to look at underperforming older, like brownfield and development structures. And here in the Northeast, we're all familiar with the mining industry, and we still see scars and residual things that have occurred as a result of that. We still have some comb piles that sit with that big slag, but that's land there that's not being used. So I think the genesis of this law was, how can we create a way to deal with this? And they did. And we actually, because I have a fantastic staff around me that looks at opportunities, and they saw this opportunity, and we put our heads together and said, okay, this might not be exactly why the law was written, but we think it fits. And the part of it that I'm talking about is that there was an operation in the city, the Pittston Hospital, that ceased to exist back in the mid-'80s when the merger occurred, the first merger between Nanticoke, Pittston, and Wilkes-Barre. And for those of you that have been around long enough, like me, the outcome of that was a thing called MPW, which later became, that was Nanticoke, Pittston, Wilkes-Barre, that later became Geisinger.
Gotcha,
right?
okay.
Well, subsequent to all of that, these three buildings have sat up on the hill, part of the property in the city and part of it in our adjoining township, Jenkins Township. And it has been underperforming, and it's been the source of police calls, and there was a fire up there, and it's a threat, another one of those threats. So we were able to go to Jenkins and say to them, look, we see this piece of the law. Will you consider allowing us to annex the three buildings into the city? We will save historic structures. We have the capacity, and this is not a slant, but cities are built differently than townships and boroughs are. We have a redevelopment authority. We have a housing authority. We have this capacity that you don't have, given the structures of our entities, and we think we can run with. And furthermore, I believe that this project will be successful enough that we don't need to be greedy. We can share the revenue.
Gotcha.
So we developed a revenue model, and under my model, because of that disparity in taxes, Jenkins actually makes more money in my deal than they do if the deal was 100% in Jenkins. And it wouldn't get done that way. Because again, they don't have the money to get grants to do the infrastructure, the roads, and the things that need to be done. So I'm really excited about that. I think this project will be one that Harrisburg looks at because they told us that. And I think down the road, not because it's important, but I think it's important to be recognized, not necessarily to receive an award, while I think we will. It's important that it's an example of best practices. It's something we can do going forward. So that's there. The other piece is that we are about to engage in, because we are in a strong financial place now, we are engaging in what will be probably about a $30 million project. It will be the construction of the second tallest and largest building in the city of Pittston. It will be the largest construction project that's been done since the old redevelopment authority days, which were in the 50s.
Wow.
It will be an 8-story building that its first floor will house what I'm calling a companion theater space. And I say companion because I believe in regionalization and I believe in regional assets. And the last thing I want to do is, there's a finite number that's out there, right? I don't want to cannibalize that number. So what I'm saying in that long, waffy elected official way is that the Kirby Center is important to me. So I want to create an entity that runs in tandem with them, that says where are the gaps that they can't fill because they're bigger. So we're building a 560-seat theater that will be a space that I think our regional school districts can use, and it will be much easier for us to light it up and energize that space than it is for the Kirby that's got almost 3,000 seats.
Yeah.
So we're going to work in partnership with the Kirby and create some new programs. Those of you that know me out there in podcast land know that the arts are very important to me. I'd like to consider myself a champion of the arts. Quite honestly, if it weren't for Main Street and the arts, I don't really have a super interest in being mayor. Political career is not, I don't use the word political and career in the same sentence. For me, being mayor has been my passion. It's not been my career. And it's my passion because of the arts, part of it. So we're doing that. The second floor of that building will be flexible space for office space. And then the remaining floors, 3 through 8, will be residential. And they'll be high-end residential. And I say that, and then I note the following, that I am very cognizant that in 2025, it is the most challenging time probably in 150 years for housing in the United States of America. And we need to come up with solutions to figure that out. So there are challenges on the most extreme where you have people that are actually homeless. And then there are challenges that have resulted in a lack of availability and attainability of housing. And what that has done is pushed these challenges right through the whole continuum. So let's take a family that's in what I would call that initial starter house, and they're looking at the next place to go to grow their family. And that may involve them leaving the city of Pittston and going to Jenkins.
Right.
Because we don't have that next model, right?
Gotcha.
They've paused because, one, interest rates have gone higher than they've ever been, and there's just not a whole lot of availability. So that's a problem in itself. But what has happened is, as a result of that, then the rest of that continuum, the person that relied on that house becoming available now doesn't have that opportunity to land housing. And worse than that, they're staying in a rental situation. Well, listen, this is the United States of America. I like capitalism and I like the benefit, but I think sometimes it goes a little too far, and I believe that there are landlords out there now that have taken a predatory position based on circumstance. And what I mean by that is that for no other reason than there's not enough, let's charge more, it's put a strain on the whole housing continuum. So getting back to my project, the 20 units, I want to be very careful that I've always asserted that if we create higher end housing, we can capture benefits from that we can take and spread across the whole continuum. So what we've done is created a self-funding program that allows us to take, let's call this project the American Project, because that's what the name of the old theater was in the city. I'm not making some large national statement. The American Theater existed. This is a replacement theater. So we'll call it the American Theater Project. Or Market in Main, let's call it that. It's less flamboyant. So the Market in Main project will create opportunities for us to capture revenue and take that revenue then and go out and invest it in across the housing continuum and make sure that we have attainable, affordable housing all across the continuum and that we address homelessness. We are very fortunate, I'm not naive, but because we are sandwiched in between Wilkes-Barre and Scranton, they really see the challenges a little bit more than us because they have the services to handle it. But we do have some issues that we need to address. I'm also, housing is super important to me, and I've served on and currently serve on some task force. So we are constantly in communication with Housing and Urban Development, or HUD as they are commonly referred to, in terms of reform. And I'm a firm believer in, I will be, one of the things that will satisfy me in whenever my tenure ends as mayor is if I can achieve this. I really believe that public housing is important and it's beneficial, but I also believe that in some ways the system, the way it exists, is handcuffing. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that you, as a resident of public housing, get punished for being successful. And I don't use that word lightly. You get punished for being successful. What do I mean by that? What do I mean by that is that as you stay there and you demonstrate that you are a good occupant of public housing, you don't get any brownie points. You know what you get? A higher rent the next year. But the income caps are not parallel or commensurate with that bump up. So you're still at this level where what you earn is controlled. And what that does to you is it gets you stuck there. You demonstrate that you can be successful and responsible, but you can never get to the next level, especially in 2025 when down payments are at like 25 or 30%. So I want to address that. I think that is a structural deficiency in the system, and I believe that housing is a great source of pride and generational wealth. As a parent, you could pass that wealth of your home down to your family. So we need to pay attention to that, and I challenge politicians at all level, my level, local, the county level, the school districts, the state and federal level, to pay attention to that, because the other challenge there is that, we're taxing seniors out of their houses. We're making them make very difficult choices. In a time in their life when they've raised families or progressed through the challenges of life, we are giving them another challenge, and we need to fix that. I mean, I believe we're a better place than that, and this is not a Democrat or Republican issue. It's an issue of the people that we are supposed to be representing.
No, I appreciate that. And so, and a lot of what you talked about were things that started a while ago.
Yes.
And I think that that's something that's very important, is the notion that it took 2 years to get to a point where now you're doing these things, or like the seed for it started in the past. And so that when people come to you as a mayor and say, hey, we're looking to get this done, it's not that it's not happening. It probably is. It takes time. It takes finding the right partners, making sure that it's done in the right way, and so that the city actually reaps benefits. Can you speak to that?
Sure. First let me say this. It's funny because a friend of mine once came to me and said, you get a lot of credit. It looks like all of a sudden things have happened. Well, we have a statement. It's my disclaimer statement. The city of Pittston, the greatest overnight story that's taken 25 years. And I've been there for 27 of it. So it points to the importance and the value of long-range planning. You cannot live in chunks of months or single years. You need to live in chunks of 5 and 10 years, and you need to long-range plan. If you don't look at the field like that, you're not going to move forward. So I think we've done a really good job, and it's not even what I think, but we have had other municipalities that have come here to look at what are you doing and how are you doing it. And one of my initial statements that I think is the most important statement that I would make is you have to have a plan. You have to have a long-range plan. And you have to realize that plan needs to be, it shouldn't be a plan of concrete. It should be a plan that has got structure to it, but has a little bit of agility where you can, shuffle left and right. It's like being on the dance floor, and if somebody steps on your toes, make it part of the routine. So nobody knows. So, that's what we try to do. We try to bake in that long-range planning. I've been, I don't know why I say it lately, but, and I've won this afternoon in new business. I love ribbon cuttings, but you know what I love more than ribbon cuttings? 5-year anniversaries. Because 5-year anniversaries means that your legs are sort of under you. So, to underscore your question, long-range planning is very critical. And I believe that we move, we move pretty quickly. As a matter of fact, I've had this conversation with Governor Shapiro, who likes to say about getting stuff done. I believe we're doing that. I believe that the responsibility of government, aside from public safety, which is one of our principal responsibilities, is to create an environment that's conducive and shows desire to have new businesses. and new residents and new people, and is flexible and diverse and can respond. I think if you build a structure like that, you'll get the growth that you need. So that's what we're attempting to do.
Very cool. So then with that in mind, what's next? What in, next 5, 10, 15 years, long term, what should we expect to see from Pittston?
I think you will be shocked in a very positive way. I think whatever you think you've seen so far, it's nothing compared to what's coming. I am extremely optimistic. It looks like I am moving into term number 5 come January, and I'm very excited about that. I'm more excited than I've ever been because probably 20 years ago it was what I thought, and now it's what I know.
Gotcha.
We've seen the results of the opportunities. So you're going to see us roll out some models that I want to think are not only local models and state models, but national models. I have a really great opportunity right now. I'm one of 8 elected officials across the country that are participating in the National League of Cities. It's a specialized arm that's looking at housing. So, for instance, the mayor of Washington, D.C. sits on that committee with me, and we're working hard to create collaborative, creative, innovative solutions that will move us forward. You're going to see a bunch of that come out of the city. I'm really excited. We're going to start opening that window so that right now we're a very strong, what I would call 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. Wednesday through Sunday. We have a lot of cool restaurants, and we have a lot of, during the day, our businesses tend to be service businesses, but we're starting to grow now some of the sort of the boutique-y kind of other opportunities and other service industries. Yeah. We need to work hard. We lost the supermarket. I don't take that lightly. I don't want to be a food desert. I want to have opportunities. In fact, we rolled out 2 years ago a public garden that has tripled in size. I am at this moment missing a pantry food giveaway that we're doing through the city. So I want to say that there's a lot of really interesting, optimistic things. I expect that in the next year we'll get another upgrade. We have an investment grade credit rating with Moody's at the moment. We have the largest financial reserve that we've ever had, and I think we can make that stronger with some of those other partnerships that you and I talked about. So the good news is things are looking really good for the city. But let me throw my mayor hat of the city of Pittston aside for a second and say, it's not only the city of Pittston. I firmly believe that there's growth happening in northeastern Pennsylvania. There are opportunities. I think it's time for us to get back to the future. At one point, the Northeast, I said this to Governor Rendell 20 years ago, that without northeastern Pennsylvania, the economic revolution of this country would have been fueled at a lot slower pace. That's partially a play on words because of coal, but we need to get back to that because we are positioned really well by geography. And if you put a pushpin in the map, and let's call that northeastern Pennsylvania, and then you look at the population of this country, you will see that a huge chunk of the population is very close to us. Yeah. So we need to take advantage of that. We need to take advantage of not the problems, but the opportunities that exist here. So as confident as I am in Pittston, I am confident that there is great leadership in the other communities, particularly the cities. And I think we're going to move forward. And again, this is not a D or an R thing. This is an us thing. Look, as political parties, I think we're in a time where we have the greatest divide we've ever existed between us. We need to fix that. And I challenge our state and federal leaders to look at us, because I believe on the ground here locally, we're getting it done. And I'm never going to make what I do about this side and that side, because when I do that, I fail the very people that were elected, the thems that I was elected to represent. And I don't care whether Democrats, Republicans, Independents, or others. There's no place for that in the leadership that I'm supposed to have. So I hope we, as a region, become a shining example of working together. And today's, this whole conference, chambers working together, right. Municipalities being on the stage, elected officials right at the moment on another session, working together is critically important. Let's walk the walk, and not only talk the talk.
And I appreciate that. And that's one thing I'll say in all the conversations that I've had in following your progress in Pittston. That's one of the things that's been amazing, is that you always point out that it's not a deer or it's our issue, that it's about the city of Pittston and helping them and the people who elected you move forward. And so I appreciate that and hope that people, that message resonates with others, that on the ground we are trying to get the work done. There's other things happening, but the work still has to happen. So.
Yeah, and we need to start to be the example of the way we want it to be. It's just simply not acceptable anymore to. We need to be better people. Mm-hmm. We need to demonstrate the way we want to treat. And maybe this is my school psychology background and my 22 years of public ed bleeding through, but maybe everybody needs to do that, because my perspective is, look, we ought to act the way we expect others to act, and we ought to not, just because you shove me doesn't mean I should shove you back.
Right.
And that's easier said than done sometimes, but let's start looking at hard models of places that's successful, and I believe we're doing it here. So, again, I'm optimistic.
I appreciate that optimism. So, well, that is all for today. I will let you get back to your busy schedule. This has been the Wilkes-Barre Connect podcast, and I'm your host, Dan Kimbrough, here with Mayor Lombardo.
Thanks, Dan. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you.